I'm David Fletcher, and I'm here with my friend Michelle Romero, who has graciously invited me to appear on her podcast. And we're just going to have a little conversation. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Romero.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, David. I love that introduction. This is Rethinking Life, and today we're going to be talking with David about how he has been rethinking life. David is a two-time children's author, currently working on his third book. We have a hard copy here of his second book, Rexie #2. So David, I think the intention of this podcast is a couple things. One is to talk about your books, what inspired your books, what your intentions are for your life with your writing, and then also to encourage other writers who are maybe reluctant to begin to start writing down their story. So let us know what inspired your story.
What inspired my story? I have always written things. Like the first published piece, in second grade, there's that paper they pass out, and it's about, 16 by 24, and the upper half is open, and then there's the big lines that you write in, and there's even the dashed lines so you can get your letters correctly because you're only in second grade. And there was a kid in the class, Brian Hahn, who was very artistic, and he drew the pictures and I wrote the words, and it was a one sheet, and it was a parody. We were so into Batman. It was the original, like, it's not reruns, it's Adam West and Burt Ward Batman. And so I wrote this parody of it that was 2 sentences long, but there we go. That was my initial
That
foray.
was the beginning.
That
So
was the
you
beginning.
knew at that point.
I had no idea. I was just having fun. It's like the idea that I would be paid to do this is still, because with the original book, the first book that I wrote, Rexie the Rat Killer, I was just trying to amuse some of my kids. And it's like, but then it's like, well, maybe I can get paid for this. But it's not why I wrote it.
Let everyone know where we can find your book.
The first book is going to be out of circulation for a minute, just because we're redoing the website. It'll be available. That one will be free. Book 2 is on Amazon. If you search Rexie #2 or David Fletcher, you'll definitely find it there.
And that's with a hashtag?
Yes,
Okay.
Rexie #2, yes. Yeah.
So head over to Amazon. You can read the synopsis of the book. I believe that you can read the first few pages. I did before I purchased the book. It's fantastic. It's clever. David and his sense of humor, since I personally know him, it shines through the book. And what would you say the age group is for the book? I mean, even though I feel like it's for adults as well, I know it's written as...
Yes, it's like we... when I say we, my daughter-in-law is married to my oldest son, helps me out quite a bit, and she has worked as a classroom teacher for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and as she read it, she said that a 5th or 6th grader of medium, I don't know what, anyway, normal reading ability could read the book. I've met one of my cousins has a daughter who was in 3rd grade when she read it, and like carries it around. Something important. It's like, oh no, geez, yeah, I'm gonna burn for that. Although she pointed out a relationship between 2 of the characters that I didn't even realize I had written.
What was that?
Well, I don't want to spoil it for the readers.
Oh, okay.
But her observation was astute, and it's like, it was shocking. It's like, I didn't even know that I said that, but yes, I did, man. So, what age group? Between, what I'm hoping for is that there's an audience not just of kids, but that adults and teenagers. Like, The Simpsons, when it first came out, my oldest son was 4 years old, and there's parts that he could understand, but then there's parts the jokes are going shoo, shoo, shoo.
Yes.
But as he rewatched it as an adult, he realized, oh my gosh, there's so much more going on there.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up watching the Bullwinkle show, Rocky and Bullwinkle. And it was funny, but when I rewatched it as an adult, oh my gosh, they were making serious social commentary, but it's disguised as a show about a flying squirrel and a moose. And
No, I can see that. I can see that. So it's something maybe if parents of younger children, it's something that you can read to them, and you're going to have a different takeaway than what the children are.
There's ideas that kids shouldn't understand. Not that they're inappropriate, but it's like, how could you? Because you don't understand that this is how adult relationships work.
Mm-hmm. That's true. So what got you started specifically? I think a lot of writers have a hard time at the beginning just getting over their own insecurities or whatever you want to say, and just thinking, well, I'm not a professional writer,
Right.
so how could I possibly write a book? Even though you feel like you have a story to share and things to give back. What did you go through any of that?
No, initially, no, because I was literally writing to make two of my kids laugh.
Okay.
And so I felt very qualified to do that.
True.
Nature and nurture, they're my children, and then I raised them, and so of course they think it's funny because the old man wrote it.
And then you just decided from there to
And then
put
just
it
have
down.
this wild idea, and it's like that. Luckily, I'm writing about something that, even though I will fact check certain points, I'm writing about a dog that talks. It doesn't talk, it barks, and you can understand it. And so it's like, I'm the expert. It's like if somebody's writing a serious nonfiction book, good luck. I don't know how to help that person, except just go do it, that helped, right? It's just like, because initially there was no pressure. I'm not writing this, I'm not trying to sell a bunch of books. I was writing, for fun. I was doing something with no expectation of being paid. I was doing it because I loved it. So
That makes sense. No, that does make it easier. I think that people that are writing nonfiction would have a different experience with that. Agreed. But just basically get out there, like you're saying, and just start doing it.
I was writing by hand on the back of recycled paper.
Jot down ideas as they're coming to you.
Right. And that in general, I think is a policy that people should have. I remember hearing this thing about the writers for Leave It to Beaver. I know that's.
I watched it.
Okay. How they talked about carrying a notebook, and they'd see something, and they'd write it down, not knowing exactly how they would use it, but knowing that this might be useful in the universe that they were writing. The Leave It to Beaver.
I could agree with that, just because ideas come and go. You have an idea and you think you're going to remember it, and you don't write it down. You're like, what was that? So
Right.
that is useful.
I read you a piece earlier out of book 2 that there's no way that you could know this, but I used a phrase that I heard in a bar in Eugene in 1982. It was this band, these two old guys, and one of them was playing the bass, the other was playing the drums and sometimes trumpet.
He was doing it all.
These two guys, and at one point, they got to this part where they literally switched instruments in the middle of the song. And they said, first time they did it, they said, switcheroony, and then the second time they said Mickey Rooney, which nobody out there's going to even know who Mickey Rooney is, but it's like at the time it's going, that's goofy, and it's like it's stuck. I didn't have my notebook with me, but it's stuck, and then eventually, right now I have the luxury of, I'm writing about, a lot of it takes place in an elementary school classroom, and I have the luxury of, I experienced that, and there's things that I couldn't get out of my brain if I tried, and now they're useful.
From your own experiences.
Yeah.
So speaking about the elementary experience that the kids are in the book, what's the major theme across the series?
It's that, as far as the elementary school aspect of it, they have a teacher who's not very nurturing. And she is based on a teacher that I had, a different teacher than one of my other kids had, where it's just like, you know, now as an adult I can look and say, why are you even in this business?
Mm-hmm.
You obviously hate children, you know. What is your major malfunction, you know? And so I think that the overall theme is like there's these two kids and they're trying to navigate the world, and you know what an astute reader would quickly pick up on is that you never see their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I didn't invent that idea. You know, in The Cat in the Hat, there's no mention of their father, and their mother, you only see like a shot where it's looking out the window and she's coming up and you see her leg. It's like, so these two kids are on their own having to navigate against this cat, and they don't know if he's, you know, what his problem is. And, you know, it's the idea of children being able to overcome situations created by adults. Stephen King in The Shining, it's like the bad element of the book is defeated by Danny, who's like 6 years old. You know, it's just like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I stole that one from him.
Would you consider yourself an avid reader?
I am horribly underread in terms of the classics, in terms of you know, books within the things that excite me. It's like.
But you definitely have authors and people that have influenced your writing.
And it's like I've discovered Audible, and so listening to books, and I don't know if it's necessarily, I think everybody has their own learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm re-listening to The Great American Novel right now. That's by Philip Roth. And to hear someone speak the words, because Roth has such a brilliance with how he chooses words and strings them together. And so hearing them spoken out loud rather than just reading them silently has this power that I didn't anticipate.
Mm-hmm.
So I like, you know, I love to read. I haven't read as much as, and you know, with my FOMO, I'm never going to read every book I'd like to read.
But I think that the more that you're practicing writing, obviously you're going to get better. But then when you're reading books, you have more of a takeaway. Like you're saying, you're looking maybe unconsciously at the sentence structure now.
Right. Oh, yeah. King, here we go. Stephen King in his book on writing, you know, the two most important things that you can do to become a writer are to write and to read. You have to be reading other people because you become better and better at understanding the mechanics of how did they put this sentence together, how did they put this paragraph together, you know, the general outline, and you see people's ability to use language. And so it's, if you're going to write, you have to read.
Yeah, I found that to be true. And then the more you write, the more you want to read as well. Or listen, like you're saying, listening to audiobooks and everything. So, what authors have really influenced you in your style?
So obviously Stephen King.
Stephen King?
He has this ability to he has an ear for common language. Like his characters don't all speak like they're educated at a good school, you know, some of them, and people's idiosyncrasies. I'm just, in The Shining, you know, again, to go with that book, he's talking about the guy who's the maintenance man for the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls out a handkerchief, and then he blows his nose, and then he looks to see what he got, but he writes it as honk, peak, you know. And so King is, I'm gonna think I have a cocaine problem. King is an influence, but also what I liked about him as social media developed, and the stuff that he would write, and it's like, God, this is just a regular guy who happens to write books, you know. It's like, he said, when there was the worldwide attack on, see, now I'm not going to be able to think of the guy's name. An editor or a writer from the Middle East, Solomon Rushdie. And so some religious sect said, we need to kill this guy. And King had a very simple, eloquent reaction to that. And I go, and I can't say because you might have kids watching, but there were swears, there was criticism. And so it's just like, oh, I like this guy more than I thought I did. Philip Roth, I think is brilliant. There's this guy from the 18th century in England named Thackeray, William Makepeace Thackeray, who wrote this novel called Vanity Fair, and it's like it makes you realize that people's interactions haven't changed in 300 years. There's still the same behaviors, and also that's where I got the idea of addressing the audience directly, just like stop the story, now talk to the audience, now back. And I had a minor disagreement with a woman who was the editor of my first 2 books. And one of the things we parted company over is you can't just talk to the audience. And she's a better writer than me and has been paid much more than me, and she's more educated than me, and she's smarter than me. And I'm going, no, Thackeray does it in Vanity Fair. And she goes, what? And I go, Thackeray, well, you know, and she goes, oh yeah, you're right, you know. Anyway, I like Roth, I like Thackeray, I like a bunch of dead white guys. Dr. Seuss had a profound influence on me. It's like I can look at it today and it's still really funny, and the pictures are amazing, and it's unhinged. It's like they're driving a train on this rickety track, and the wheels aren't even touching the tracks, and there's a goat in the train, and it's just like, wow. I mean, it just captured me from the jump, and I still think it's amazing. You know, but then I'm always looking at, I read a lot of people on Twitter, how are they using language? I'm always just watching, how do you construct the joke? How does so.
Would you consider yourself strictly a comedic writer? Or have you written some serious, or you get your point across using your humor? That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm not even trying to, there's no moral. I'm trying to be funny, and then, you know, one of the things I learned in, 6 years of college to get a 4-year degree was that, but this was a good takeaway. This woman was talking about how to write a term paper. That was the whole class. And it's like, who's your audience? What are their characteristics, and how do you approach them? And so if you're going to do it consciously rather than just, sometimes you have to, I would use different languages if I was writing a recommendation for someone to get into college. Mm-hmm. Sort of. One time, this young woman, she's trying to get into a fairly conservative school, where fairly conservative. And I wrote this essay or whatever, a recommendation where I talked for the purpose of talking about the personal progress I had seen her make. Because the grades were no issue. She had the grades and the extracurricular activities and everything. But I'm trying to talk about who she is as a person and how I had seen her grow and develop in the 5 years that I had known her. And I used the words, back in this year, I would not have recommended her for name of school I was recommending her for, much less, or no, I wouldn't have recommended her for clown college, much less your school. And it's just like, nobody writes that.
No.
And yeah, the person that has to sit there and read 100 of them a day, I think that made them sit up straight,
I got their attention.
Yeah, so I mean, am I trying to be funny? I'm trying to be funny, but
I think you're succeeding.
I
I would say.
okay. I can do both. I can be an adult when it's necessary.
Tell us about the artwork. I'm telling you, everything about David's books are very clever. Talk to us about the cover art.
We, again, when I say we, I mean my one of my daughters-in-law. We came up with this idea of we're going to make the cover, and then we want it to appear as though it's been in a classroom, it's been defaced by school children. Because I always liked, in grade school, there's the classroom set of books. You don't have your own books when you're in grade school. And so there's the classroom set, and there's all these things where people have drawn, sometimes not very good, sometimes really good. There's also it was the forerunner of Choose Your Own Adventure. Go to page da-da-da. So then you go to that page, go to page, somebody's written.
Oh, yeah, I love those.
Right, but then sometimes at the end it wasn't very good,
Yeah.
But the good ones,
But
it's
it's the
always worth
adventure
it.
that was fun.
Right, and so we came up with this idea, and so we had a very talented artist named Julie Rose who did this watercolors for us, and we didn't tell her about the defacing aspect of it initially. It's just like draw, these two kids and the dog, and then we got in full gear, and it's like I Googled textbook defacing, and there's some brilliant people out there. Literally, I'm laughing out loud just thinking about it. And it's like, and so what we came up with, here's, the dog is though some kid has been assigned to read this in class, and he's just, this is stupid, and he starts, and so Rexie number 2 becomes Rexie Goes number 2, and then there's the evidence right there. It's the dotted line indicating this came out of the dog's butt, and then the piece de resistance, the stink lines. You can't have poop without stink lines. So it's just
Every cover has its own defacing.
yeah. You mean
The
will they be
cover of the
individual?
first book.
Oh, the cover,
has-
the defacing on the first book is different than the second one. Right. Yeah, and so we just said this is our brand. We're going to come up with I have to come up with the title, and I have to come up with what's the artwork look like, and then how we're going to mess with it.
Is there a way, so the first book is completely on hold for a while, or is there a way that people can get a hold of you and then you can send them the book? Is that still available?
What we could do possibly is create a link in the show notes for this episode.
Okay.
I'll have to talk to you about that after the camera's off.
Okay.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I think we could do that. I don't technically know how to do that, but if you do,
We can figure it
we'll
out.
figure it out. So okay, go to the. You'll see it in the link. There'll be a link to it.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, because you have to pick up I picked up the second book without reading the first, and then it just made me want to read the first one even more.
Well, specifically because that's where I address the reader and say, hey, if you'd read the first book, you'd already know this.
Yes.
See, that's kind of being a jerk. But the first book's free. The first book is free. We will never charge for that until it's part of a bound set for which, you have to pay thousands of dollars to get the exclusive. So I can finally quit the casino.
Anyway, let's see here. Talk to us a little more about the characters, because I think that, unless people have read the books, they don't know that there are 3 main characters.
There's, so it's based on, based on a true story. I actually
Based on life experience, all put together in a series of books.
I am so fascinated by the phrase "based on a true story." It's like when we're watching movie trailers, at a theater, and it's just like, and they put that in the trailer based on a true story.
Oh yeah, it makes you want to see it.
Well, not necessarily, but I will
I
make
don't
my
know.
children acknowledge it. I'll look at them with a sense of wonder. oh my God. And it's like I raise my fist and I'll stare at them until they do it. And they're just so, what is wrong with you, you know? So we're actually putting that on the cover of book 3 based on a true story. Because it is, in that we had this dog. Letter of the law, he belonged to my ex-wife, so he lived with her and my kids. But he was just a wonderful dog. He was a stray. He had wandered up to a coworker's house, and she couldn't keep him because he was so bad at math that he thought he was the boss of much bigger dogs. And so she was asking around at work who could take this dog, and my ex, she said, well, I could do that. And so he came to live in her home, and he just had him for 8 years, and he was just wonderful, and he just loved, especially, I mean, he loved all of us, it was obvious, but he especially loved the twins, and so it just, I don't know, I got it. The book is about him. For someone who hasn't read it, the only words he uses in replying, because he is a talking dog, are woof, woof, woof. And through how the boys respond to him, you infer what he said. It's like this really old device. It's in Mary Poppins, the one with Julie Andrews. Mm-hmm. She's taking the kids to the park, and they come across this dog who had applied for the job of nanny but lost. Anyway, she speaks to the dog, and the dog barks back, and you can't hear anything but a dog barking, but then when Mary responds to the dog, you realize what the dog has said. And so
I had forgotten all about that.
Well, Bob Newhart, before that, Bob Newhart did this bit where, this is how he got started in comedy. He'd be on the phone, so he'd have an old phone like people commonly used back in the day, and he's on the phone, and you can only hear his side of the conversation, but from his side, you infer what the person on the other end is saying. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's just, so the dog only barks, and the dog is kind of a smart ass. and he, you know, what I accidentally landed on was giving him human qualities, but he's got restrictions. He's wired, he's a dog, he's wired to behave certain ways. Mm-hmm. And so it's this mix of he's being human, but then he's just being a dog, and then the two boys that he lives with, based on a true story, they very somewhat like, I've taken a lot of liberties in terms of, I can bend this any way I want. Mm-hmm. So it's the relationship between the three of them and the people that they interact with, the teacher who's not very nurturing, and
she bullies.
She's a bully. And that the teacher's pet, her favorite student, he's a bully. Mm-hmm. And there's various adults some become allies and some are neutral, but it's just their adventures, and they get in trouble and the dog saves them. Come on, what do you want?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's it. That's the whole story, and I'm going to tell it, about 22 times. I have ideas, but there's only one story. The kids get in trouble and the dog saves them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think for anyone that's interested in getting started in writing? And writing is not always the easiest task. Things are going to flow for a while, and then you might hit little roadblocks. What do you do during those times where?
Like the 5-year roadblock in which I'm currently mired. There's, a couple ideas that this isn't stuff that I've thought of, but I've read, and it's like, yeah, this makes sense. Two of them that really appeal to me lately are, go back and read what you've written, so that you get into the flow of the story. Hopefully the next logical thing is, now I'm going to continue that story. A new idea that I just heard that I really like in terms of goal setting, that I think very much would apply to this. Set 3 goals. I mean, obviously you want to write every day.
Mm-hmm.
And one is just a bare minimum. I'm going to write for 1 minute. There's like the bare minimum, and then there's the, I don't know if acceptable is the right word, but it's just like, this is what I'm really trying to get to. And then there's the third one where if you just really got into it. I heard it in reference to meditation. It's just like, this woman saying, meditate for 1 minute. Who can't do that?
Mm-hmm.
You can meditate for 1 minute. You know, and she found that she always could, and that for the most part, she would do at least the 5 minutes of meditation, but then on other days she'd make it to 10. And so, I mean, it's hard because you think you can't, I don't know what to do with this, but the act of, what I have found, the act of writing, you know, when I was still in college, one of the things that I came to by way of that marriage was an electric typewriter, which I know this is sad, ancient history, right? But it was a big deal. It's like, holy cow. I mean, I would have married her a lot sooner. That's a lie. Okay, so, and I had I would take it out every day. I wasn't even trying to write, like, there was no purpose, there was no, but I would write. I would type every day, and I would sit there and just babble. I liked the sound of that machine, and just every day I would sit down for maybe 30 minutes and write. And some of the stuff, you know, that I wrote a long time ago, is actually still holds up. And but it was like the idea of doing it every day so that you're in that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Which is so much easier for people today because we just have our phones accessible to us, and computers, and, you know, writing things down like we were talking about before. And so, and we see so many things, so there's so much inspiration outside of us that can trigger ideas and concepts and new ways of seeing things and thinking that I found very helpful, along with reading. And
I mean, I think people should get in the mindset, especially people are so busy, get in the mindset of, if you can, write on your phone, literally thumb. I mean, I have done it. It's like, I'm on break, and it's like all of a sudden, oh, what about, you know, and I'll open up the manuscript and just, you know, it can be a horrible distraction, but, you know, turn it around and make it a tool.
Make it something useful.
Right.
I've also found even doing a short video, if you, you know, I've been driving and not been able to write, but I know that I need to make a memo, or the idea is I'm going to forget it. And so I'll do a short video that's only for me, and then once I get home I can transcribe those ideas.
Perfect.
But it's like, when it comes to you, you need to put it down before you forget it.
Absolutely. And yes, I have been at work and been in a position where I did not have access to paper.
Write this down for me.
I have called over supervisors and said, please write this down for me. Because otherwise it's gone.
Yeah. It's those little moments of boredom that I think a lot of people try to fill their life with distractions, that are actually the times when those ideas can come to you. And you get those moments, I'm sure too, where you're just kind of standing there. You have to be in that position.
Right.
But you can let your imagination go, and it takes you.
Exactly.
It takes you pretty far. And so that's when the ideas just flow into you. When you're not doing, it's okay to be bored.
Yeah.
It's okay to just sit and think and contemplate.
Yes. Aaron, who wrote The West Wing, and Sorkin. I'm listening to this podcast today with Sorkin, and when he wrote the stage play, what's the movie with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise? You Can't Handle the Truth.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's originally a stage play. And he wrote it because he's living in New York, he's tending bar, and he would write it on scraps of paper while he was at work, but then he came home and there were no distractions. He can't pick up his phone and get lost in social media for 5 hours or go down some Wikipedia rabbit hole that leads to another. He didn't have that option. He had a typewriter and he didn't have the money to go out, and he had this idea for a play. It's killing me that I can't remember it. Anyway, I'll shout it out before the end of the podcast. And they were talking about the very idea, he and the interviewer in this podcast, is like kids today don't have to be bored. Sorkin wrote it out of boredom. You know, he didn't have anything else to do, and he didn't have the money to go do anything, and he didn't have, you know, this amazing computer that he could hold in his hand that he could, you know, ease the boredom with. And so they're worried that how in a bigger picture sense, how is this going to affect what people write going forward? What is the name of that?
Is it like Officer and a Gentleman or
No.
something? I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not even going to guess anymore. That was my only guess.
It's okay. No, I can't.
Other things, what I found helpful is also, it's a total, you know, I have a totally different writing style. I am writing factual things
Right.
and not stories.
Right.
But what I found is just because of my schedule and not wanting to take away from too much family time, literally what I did was, and also just knowing myself, that if I take a year to do this, I'm gonna get bored of it. Like, I'm just gonna lose focus. When I do things, I really need to get them done and then move on. And so I literally said, I personally don't want to take away too much time from my family because I'm a single parent.
Right.
And so my time with my family is precious. You know, not that everyone's isn't, but I just didn't want the children to feel, well, you know, Mom's spending a whole year writing this book and not spending quality time with us. And,
Right.
you know, their upbringing is very important to me. So I literally said, okay, I'm going to give myself a month. Actually, there's a lady that I follow that I love her. She brings up women and talks about being an asset woman and all this. And I looked on her website, and she has many books written. And one of them was how to write a book in 30 days. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, this is how many days off I get in a month. I'm going to write a book in 15 days.
Right.
If she says 30, then I know that 30 is possible.
Right.
Because somebody said so.
That makes it true.
I just in my mind thought, okay, hey, why not?
Right.
I was just open to the idea, basically.
Right.
And so I divided it all out, and I had no idea how many pages a book should be. You know, in my mind, I thought it had to be some sort of thick novel.
Right.
Until another day, you just take little pieces from everyone. Till somebody said, Michelle, the book only needs to be as many pages as it needs to be.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's an interesting concept. Okay, well, I'm not going to bog myself down thinking this has to be 300 pages then.
Right.
It just needs to be as long as it needs to be to get the point across.
Right.
So that took a big burden off of my shoulders.
Right.
So when you're writing, just try to keep some of these things in mind. So anyway, I'm very fortunate to get 3 days off a week from work. And so I literally divided out approximately maybe how many pages I thought that I needed because I'm in a mathematical business.
Yes.
So
You, within the construct of, I can't ignore my children. They need to get a certain amount of time. And so
Yes.
when you sit down and write, you're on a mission. I've got to get this much done.
Yes, I got up earlier than everybody, so it didn't take away time from the family. If anybody was going to suffer in this process, it was going to be me.
Mhm.
But knowing that it was only going to be a limited time, I felt like I could handle it without, like getting sick and wearing myself out and everything. And just the kind of positive energy that comes from knowing that you're going to do something
Uh-huh.
constructive kind of also helps offset those, like maybe the tendency to wear yourself down emotionally.
Right.
I felt like. And so I literally divided out, okay, I get however many days off a month, approximately what's the minimum amount of pages I'm going to write a day? And that would be 5. Which I never even wrote a 1-page paper before this.
Right.
I thought if a teacher in high school or college said write 1 pages or a 3 to 5 page report or something, I literally just felt overwhelmed. I did not excel in high school writing or anything, and the only class I really felt like I got anything out of, and I'm not a college graduate, but was the 2nd year English class in college. That year, something kind of clicked in me where I understood sentence structure.
So was it a writing class or a literature class?
It was just literally English 2.
Okay.
Like English 102.
Okay.
The second one.
Okay.
Just a very basic class.
Okay.
But it just pushed me outside of what I left high school not knowing anything about writing. And I'm not saying that anything about the teachers, but that's just, whatever level that I was at that time in my life.
Yeah.
I couldn't read even a couple pages. I don't know if I had like a mild form of some sort of dyslexia type thing going on, but literally like I would just read the first couple sentences and it wasn't registering, and I could just read it over and over. And my sister was an avid reader, and so I'd say, Heather, remember 1984?
That's
and
not
she'd
her
say,
real name.
and she'd say,
Made something else to
and
protect
she'd
her.
say, yes, and I'd say, would you please help me with my report? Because I literally couldn't even start it. I didn't know how to build a paragraph. That's pretty sad, but that was the state. So my point is that I feel like anyone can write, and then once you get out of your own head and thinking, I always had thought of myself, I'm not a writer, I'm not a reader, and I think that when I would start to write in my mid-20s, and I would get these ideas, I would say divine ideas, they weren't coming from me, they just popped in my head, and I would get so excited about them, and I'd write them down, and maybe I would show them to somebody, and then that somebody would be like, and so I'd go, well, this must be terrible. And so I would...
You showed it to the wrong person.
Yeah, so I would rip it up and toss it aside and be like, okay, I guess I'll just keep going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, this is life. Until I got to a certain time in life where I started to just say, well, why not? Well, why not? I have things to share.
Right.
And actually, David is the one who inspired me to get on YouTube one day. For me, it takes very little. I just pull the information out. David and I were talking, and he said, to sum it up, like, you need to get on YouTube because you have things to share with people, which I agreed with, but I only needed David to say that. And I think after that, 4 days a week for however long, I made videos every single day after we talked.
Wow. And that was, I remember that specific conversation. It was at the Stick in the big office. And
not in a bossy way, you said, though. Don't do it in a bossy way. That's just who I am.
I think the reason, like you talked about, how you said an idea comes to you from an external source, like you can't specifically identify it, and it's just like I don't even know how we started having that conversation that day, but what I was saying to you was coming from an external source, like greater than me, where she needs to hear this. and as I heard myself saying it, because it wasn't planned out, it's just like, I'm going, oh yeah, this is right, you know, but I used a little bit of the high gas, you know, where it's like, I'm gonna put a little oomph on this, but I was right.
But when you know people and you respect, find people that want more out of themselves and more out of life, and I don't know, it's just like you just have to really align with people like that, because you will encourage each other.
Yes.
You need to find people, first off, you have to be able to validate yourself, and then you need to start aligning with people that are happy that you are attempting to live your dreams, and that will reinforce it even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people that you trust their opinion, like, I mean, sometimes you write something and you go, I'm not sure if this is good or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is this? What do I get from? It's like, I know who the canary in the coal mine has a negative connotation. There's people that I know, if I show that something to them and they tell me it's good, that's sincere. They don't have a problem telling me my problem.
Mm-hmm.
As you talked about writing, you know, okay, I'm going to sit down, I've only got this much time, or I'm going to be neglecting other equally important things. And I think there's value to that. There's value to knowing, are you motivated by the carrot or the stick? You know, people are always a mixture, or can change depending on which aspect of their life, but you didn't want the negative consequences. You could have ignored everybody, you could have called in sick, and you could have been done in a week, but you weren't willing to live with the consequences of that. And so, okay, I've only got this much time, now I have to use it.
No excuses. No excuses. No time for self-doubt. I did a ton of affirmations that my writing flows freely, whether I believed it or not. I told myself that constantly, that I have important things to share with people that would supersede my fear and self-doubt. I mean, it's not like, I think every writer or anyone that's striving for more has these. This is not something that goes away even. It's just something that I don't want to say deal with. It's something
Overcome.
We manage.
Manage.
Because David's writing his third book. I'm writing my second book. And I would say that those have not gone away. I mean, basically, whatever you've done, it's like, okay, I've done this.
Right.
But you can't live on that glory forever. You know, like, that's done. Now what? Now what?
Not unless it sells 1 billion copies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's not the final. That's not the
Right.
end all be all of.
So 2 thoughts on, again, stuff that I picked up. Oh, we need to hurry, okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
I
you're okay.
reserved this room for 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Is
yeah.
it 2?
Yeah.
Oh, my
sorry.
word.
Okay.
I know.
Oh, no, you're fine. Absolutely.
Let me
Thank
say
you.
this really quick. Hemingway, no matter how late he stayed up drinking, he was up at 7 with a yellow pad and a pen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he just had this habit of writing. I listened to this podcast with Matt Damon, and he and Ben Affleck, they were living in an apartment that was really meant for 2 people, and circumstances had put 3 people in there. And so they were writing 12 hours a day on Good Will Hunting out of necessity. We're in an untenable situation. You know, for them it was the stick. They had to get this done.
Yes.
Anyway.
Okay. Thank you
been
all
wonderful.
so much for listening. To be continued.
Yes, and you want to see A Few Good Men starring Jack Nicholson and Tom
A
Cruise.
few good men. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thanks,
you
Michelle.
being here.